Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I'm going to be continuing a series that I started a while back, but it's going to be a video on the top 10 current small forwards in the NBA as of right now. I just want to get back to this series and finish them out because I did centers and power forwards, and if you missed those videos, you can go back and check them back on my channel. But I wanted to do this video on small forwards just to keep it going and to talk about some of the current talent that's small forward in the NBA right now. So I'm going to be starting from number 10 and working my way down to number 1 and just talking a little bit about each guy as I go and why I put them where they did and just a little bit about their games and stuff and what I like about them. So starting off this list at number 10, I have Tobias Harris, who I'm going to count as a small forward. He does play some power forward too in stretch lineups, but I'm just going to say he's a small forward just because that's more his natural position. This past season, he averaged 19 points a game, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal a game. I think the thing that I like most about his game is his ability to shoot from the outside. This last year he shot 41% from 3. He took about 6 a game, which is quite a few to be shooting 41%. He shot 46% from the field, which is decent. It could stand to be a little bit higher, but I really like him a lot. I think that he's exactly what you want in the modern NBA. A guy that can shoot sort of a 3-and-D player, but he can create a little bit for himself. On offense, he doesn't need to just catch and shoot, which is nice. If you don't know much about him, he has been traded a lot, but really started making a name for himself in Orlando back in around 2012, 2013. He was part of the J.J. Redick trade. That's who Orlando got in exchange for J.J. Redick going to Milwaukee. Then after he left Orlando, he went to Detroit and did pretty well for himself, and then he got traded to Los Angeles for Blake Griffin. He was essentially the main prize for Blake Griffin. I think he's a guy who you just continue to see steady improvement from. His averages just keep going up every year, it seems like, and he just keeps getting better. And I can't wait to see what's in the future for Tobias Harris. I think he could potentially be an all-star one day. He's still relatively young. He's only 25. He's still not in his prime, I don't think you'd say. And he's just continuing to grow, which is exactly what you want from an NBA player. So now at number 9 on this list, I have Andrew Wiggins. And now you might initially say, well, why do you have Andrew Wiggins even on this list? He's not that good. But I do think he's somewhat decent. I'll go through some of his stats here. This last year, he actually had a down year, which is why he's a bit lower on this list for me. I probably would have put him around 7 if it would have been the previous year's stats, but his stats for the last year were 44% shooting from the field, 33% shooting from three-point land, 18 points a game, 4 rebounds a game, 2 assists a game, 1 steal a game. Those are actually well below his career average, which is 20 points a game, and 45% from the field, which is a bit better. Just for comparison, the season prior to this last one, he averaged 24 points a game and shot better from the field at 45% and better from 3 at 36% compared to 33%. I think the main reason that his numbers went down and his shots went down is that he, obviously with Jimmy Butler, he's going to get less shots because Jimmy Butler commands a lot more shot attempts than a guy like Zach LaVine does. And Andrew Wiggins did shoot a worse percentage, but I still think that he still produces. His lowest average in a season ever was 17 points a game, which is pretty good. Really, the thing about Andrew Wiggins is he needs to improve his defense, which is what everyone says every year, and he needs to improve his three-point shot because he can take the ball off the dribble and just drive and score, and he does do a decent job in the mid-range, but what he really needs to improve on is his three-point shot and his defense. If he can really improve in those two areas, he will be a solid NBA player for years to come. So I'm putting him here more on potential because I do think that right now he's about as good as Tobias Harris, but you could argue Tobias Harris is better because of his three-point shooting. But I do think that, and if you're going to start a franchise with one, I'd probably start with Andrew Wiggins just because of his potential. So I put him higher than Tobias Harris. Now the next guy on here is an interesting guy in that he has had a very odd career, I'd say, but he had a really good bounce back season this past year, and that is Tyreke Evans. So if you don't know much about Tyreke Evans, he was the Rookie of the Year in 2010, and ever since then he's never really repeated that production. His numbers actually went down in the following every year in the following 5 seasons, and not until 2015 did he start to improve again. But this last season, playing for Memphis, he averaged 19 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal a game. He shot 40% from 3 and 45% from the field, which are pretty good shooting splits for him. The 40% from 3 is the really good thing. For his career, he shoots about 32% from 3, so shooting 40% is very impressive for him. He really looked at home again in Memphis. He got to run the point, which I think is his natural position, honestly. When he was in New Orleans for about 4 years, they were trying to make him a small forward or a shooting guard sometimes, which wasn't really working. He is 6'6", so he can be put at small forward or shooting guard, but when he was a rookie in Sacramento, he was playing point guard basically, and even they pushed him over to another position at like small forward and shooting guard, so he got worse as far as his production. But I think he's best when he's running the point guard because he's more effective as a scorer then because he scores off the dribble a lot. He's not much of a catch and shoot guy. He did develop that more in Memphis, so he's more well-rounded now that he shoots good from 3, so he can just catch it and shoot it more. I'm really excited to see what him and Victor Oladipo do in Indiana. I think their acquisition of him is one of the most underrated this whole offseason, and it will be really interesting to see how he performs and how well they do and if they improve or not in Indiana. So let's see here. The next guy on this list at number 7 is Jayson Tatum. And now Jayson Tatum, I'm sort of putting in the spot, same reason as Andrew Wiggins. Like his raw stats from this last year don't say as much as like what he showed us, and just like considering his age too, he was only 19 when he was doing all this last year. But I'll just go through his stats quick for the season. He averaged 14 points a game, 48% shooting from the field, 43% from the three-point land, 5 rebounds, 2 assists a game, 1 steal. So like not all that impressive, but he did have better stats in the playoffs, which is what I'm going to more focus on because that's when he was being like looked at as the primary option on the team. He had 19 points a game, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal a game. He shot 47% from the field, and his three-point shooting did go down considerably, down to 32%. But he just showed that he could be a primary option on a team that went to the Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. He was the go-to guy during those during those 3 series of the postseason. And I think just what you have to consider is he was 19 years old, putting up 19 points a game on good shooting in the playoffs. Like what's he going to be when he's 26 if he keeps up on this pace? He'll probably be averaging 30 points a game on those same percentages or better percentages. So the reason his average was so low in the regular season was because he had Kyrie, Al Horford, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Morris, just lots of guys that can score. So the ball had to be distributed a lot more than in the playoffs when there was no Kyrie and they were just really looking at Tatum to be the go-to scorer. So at number 6 on this list, I actually have his teammate, who is Gordon Hayward. And now Gordon Hayward didn't play at all really last year except for 1 game. But I'm going to sort of act as if he was healthy, and then that's where I'm going to go from, because I think that if he's healthy, he'd be the number 6 small forward in the NBA. His most recent healthy season was 2016-17, in which he averaged 22 points a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal. He shot 47% from the field and 40% from 3, which is very good. He was an all-star that year. He had his best season by far. And he's a guy that can kind of do a little bit of everything for you. He can take the ball down the court and run the offense a little bit if you need that. He can be a spot-up shooter if you need that. He's a decent defender. He can, score off the drive and do dribble penetrations if that's what you want. He can create his own shot. He can just do a little bit of everything, and I think that's why he's a really good player and really useful to the Celtics. A really good Swiss Army knife. If they have a lineup, let's say, of Kyrie, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, Tatum, and Horford, all those guys can shoot, and all those guys can, basically create their own shot. Maybe Horford needs to be fed a little bit, but I think that you could say the rest can create their own shot and shoot. So Gordon Hayward's a big part of that too, because he's 6'8". In today's NBA, he can really guard any position 1 through 4, and so he's very versatile in that way. And I think that he's a useful player to the Celtics and will be very good for them moving forward. And I hope he gets healthy and plays a full season of health in Boston. Number 5 on this list, getting into the top 5, is a guy who I think just by his position shows how loaded small forwards are in the NBA, that he's all the way down at number 5. It's Paul George of the of the Oklahoma City Thunder. This last season in Oklahoma, he put up 22 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals a game. He shot 43% from the field, which is a bit low, but it's okay, I suppose. And he shot 40% from 3, which is what is really good. Paul George, he is similar to Gordon Hayward, but a bit better in that he's got kind of everything you want. He can spot up and shoot like he's been doing in Oklahoma City, which has been really good. When he's in Indiana, he could create his own shot and score off the dribble drive and just be creative with his offense and run the show if you need him to do that. He's a first-team all-defense defender, so he's one of the top wing defenders in the NBA, as evidenced by his steals numbers, which are very high, I'd say. And yeah, I will be interested to see how he does in Oklahoma City this upcoming season. I feel like they're going to be around a 4 seed, largely in part to him and Russ, obviously. But it would have been interesting to see him in Los Angeles too. But I think that him in Oklahoma City is still entertaining because I feel like Russ needs somebody to play with to be competitive. So I look forward to seeing what they are able to do in the next season. And, one last thing about Paul George I didn't really mention. He's often listed at 6'8", but in his rookie year or his sophomore year, I think, when he was starting to come on the scene a bit more, they mentioned that he's actually 6'10", and this was when he was still playing shooting guard next to Danny Granger. And he doesn't play shooting guard much anymore, mainly small forward. But I tell you, if he would still play shooting guard, him as a 6'10" shooting guard is almost unstoppable, I think, when you're going up against guys sometimes like CJ McCollum, who's like 6'2", 6'3". Having a 6'10" guy at shooting guard is really useful. I would advocate that Oklahoma City start him at shooting guard much more and slot in a guy like Jeremy Grant at small forward so that you can have Paul at shooting guard and he can really take advantage of those size mismatches. Now, number 4 on this list is a guy who some would consider the best player in the NBA. I would say no, but he is here on my list. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. I can never say his last name right, so I usually just call him the Greek Freak. So I'll read off some of his stats from this last year. He had 27 points a game, 10 rebounds a game, 5 assists a game, 2 steals a game, 1 block a game. He shot 53% from the field, which is really good. His only weakness is his three-point shooting. He only shot 31% from 3. That's really the only weakness in his game. If he can improve that, he will be unstoppable on offense. And as far as defense goes, he could stand to be a little bit better. He's like an average defender right now. He gets some good blocks, and because of his long arms, he gets blocks and steals. Well, I guess steals is more your quick hands, but blocks is because of your arms. But he just needs to become a little bit better. He's not like a lockdown defender. He's just like an average to slightly above average defender, I'd say right now. But with his frame, he could be like a defensive player of the year candidate every year. But yeah, so if he could improve his defense a little bit and improve his three-point shooting, he would be like unstoppable and probably the best player in the NBA. And he's 6'11", but he does play point guard sometimes, which is always impressive. I always am wondering why his assist numbers aren't higher. He did get 5 this last year, but I think maybe with Eric Bledsoe there, he wasn't running point guard as much, so he didn't get as many assists. but he definitely could run point guard for them. It'd be very interesting to see him like full-time at point guard. Moving on to number 3 on here, I have a guy much like Gordon Hayward who's injured for a lot of last year, and that would be Kawhi Leonard. So I'm going to more look at his stats from 2017 and just like kind of assume if he was healthy he'd perform at the same level. So in 2017 he averaged 26 points a game, 6 rebounds a game, 4 assists a game, 2 steals a game, 1 block. He shot 49% from the field, 38% from 3, which is pretty decent. You know, he's a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He can lock you down on defense. He has locked down LeBron in the past, which is impressive. I don't know. He's a head case for sure, and I'm not really going to talk about that or his personality at all. I just want to focus on basketball. I think the only weakness I can identify in his game is that he cannot dish the ball whatsoever. He averages 2 assists for his career. He's not really a playmaker per se, but you know, if you have a point guard, that's not really a huge deal. Let's see here. For his career, he averages 2 steals a game, so obviously he's good on defense and the 2 Defensive Player of the Years. He's a really good on-ball defender. He can guard 1 through 3. I don't think he can really guard power forwards, but in today's NBA, with guys like Tobias Harris playing power forward more often, he can guard a guy like Tobias Harris. So if it's a small ball stretch 4, then he can guard them, but if it's a traditional like Pau Gasol power forward, then he can't really. But yeah, you know, he's really well-rounded. He can shoot it well. He can create some of his own shot. I'd say what I would compare him to is like what you would be seeing if Scottie Pippen never played with Michael Jordan, or like basically had his own team, because I think that he's putting up like similar stats to what Scottie Pippen would put up if Scottie Pippen had his own team for like his entire career. Alright, so moving on to number 2, we have Kevin Durant from Golden State. You know, he's a phenomenal player. No weaknesses to his game. The only weakness I saw in his game was that he wasn't much of a defender. It was like an average defender, but now since he got to Golden State, he became like a really good defender. He upped his blocks per game from his typical 1 to 2, which is good because he is 7 feet tall as a small forward, so he should be getting 2 blocks a game, considering his opponents are so much smaller. This last season, he averaged 26 points a game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, 1 steal. He shot 52% from the field, 42% from 3, which is really good shooting numbers. Really no weaknesses. The only things that he really doesn't do is he has decent assist numbers, but he isn't really known as like a playmaker for others. And his on-ball defense is good, so I can't really come up with any weaknesses. He's not super strong, like driving to the rack. If he's being guarded by a bigger guy, he can't just muscle them. But really, his game is more finesse, I'd say, and more like it's just not a ton of like power dunks and like backing guys down and like bullying his way to the basket. So he doesn't really need to worry about that. So there's really no weakness because his shooting numbers are great and he puts the ball in the hole like none other. And so rounding it out at number 1, I am still putting LeBron James here. I do still think he is the best player at the small forward position. I just think it's kind of undeniable all the things that he does for his team. This last season, let's see here. In the regular season, he averaged 28 points a game, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block a game. He shot 54% from the field, and actually a bit higher than his usual. He shot 37% from 3, which is good. Yeah, you know, I can't really come up with a weakness for him on offense, because his shooting numbers are better this year, and he is averaging 9 rebounds and 9 assists a game. So, yeah, he's pretty much flawless on offense. On defense, he could stand to be quite a bit better. He was ranked very low in defensive rating this last year, like in the 300s out of the players in the NBA, where there's only like 400 active players, so that's really not good. I think it's because he's getting older and he takes a lot of plays off just to save his energy for offense because they needed so much help with shot creation on offense. But But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what he does going forward with the Lakers. I really don't know what to make of that, honestly. If you want to check out my initial reaction, see my video on that. I made a video on my reaction to LeBron joining the Lakers and the implications. His shooting numbers are good, though, which is always good for him. He always shoots pretty well from the field. And I think what's impressive, I'm going to read off his playoff stats from this last year. He averaged 34 points a game, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, a steal, and a block a game. He put up the same shooting numbers basically, but he had like a lot of games where he was like putting up like 45 points in this last year's playoffs, which is impressive. And like in the Indiana series, I think he averaged like 39 points a game, which is impressive. Obviously, it's like astronomical, but yeah, the 34 points a game, highly impressive. His highest shooting or highest point average in a playoff since 2009 when he had to put the team on his back. But yeah, his only weakness is his on-ball defense anymore. He's just a bit slower on defense and doesn't put in as much energy because he saves it for offense. But still, when he wants to turn it on, he can turn it on and be good on both ends of the ball. He did still have decent blocks and steals in the playoffs, so he's still a decent defender when he wants to be, but he just chooses not to be a lot of the time, I think, in my opinion. So there you have it, guys. A brief overview of my top 10 NBA small forwards. I'd say it's probably the second deepest position in the NBA, and the deepest position is still yet to come, and I look forward to making that video and talking to you guys about them. Alright, bye guys. Actually, real quick, if you have a comment, leave it below. If you disagree with my rankings, tell me about it. I'd love to talk it over in the comments with you guys. Alright, bye guys.